Welcome back to the channel. You guys know I'm all about marriage, and I have an absolutely wonderful guest. I've been knowing her for a long period of time. Her name is April. Okay, and she is married, and I wanted to bring her on so we could talk a little bit more about marriage because you all know that I love to find people that are very serious about marriage, whether they're married, whether they're divorced but want to get married again, or whether they're on that single journey but they have made marriage, something that's very important and significant in their lives. And I also love, to lean into Christians when I can. And, April is also a Christian. She loves Jesus, at least I think she does, or she's lying to me. But so we're gonna get into this, and yeah. So April, I just will start it off by asking, okay, just like I said, let people know, like I said, how long you've been married, how many kids you have, and just give us a base understanding of, when you first met your husband. Okay, what was like your initial thoughts when you first met him?
Okay, Joseph, good to see you. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited for this conversation. But I have been married 25 years, and this year is our 26th. And I have four babies. They are now teenagers. Two are in university, one is in high school, and one is going to high school. So they're 19, 17, 16, 17, 15, and 13. And when I met Ivan, we were nothing but friends. We never dated or anything like that. We were friends for approximately 4 years, and I did have a boyfriend prior to him, and I was very serious about, and it just didn't work out between us. And I'll say it like that, and I'll make it very kind and nice. It didn't work out okay, but lucky for him. No, but so Ivan was my friend during that time, and I knew that he was interested in me, but of course, there was no interest there because of the other individual. And when their relationship was over, I was pretty much considering all the men in my life just simply because university only lasts 4 years, and I needed to know what my next move was, and I knew that marriage was a big part of that, a big part of my future. And
Hmm.
so I wasn't going to take it very lightly making that choice, but I knew I needed to make it as quickly as possible, so that we can have something to build on as
Hmm.
we continued our life. And I did not want to go back to my mom's house, which it wasn't a very healthy place for me. And so I had to make a decision about, my future. And at that particular time, I had a
Hmm.
hearing loss, and that largely determined a lot because most people, they didn't give me a job, they wouldn't hire me. It didn't matter how many interviews I did, I just couldn't find work. So I didn't know I was what I was going to do after university because I couldn't find employment. So I was really, really considering, okay, who is going to be my mate, my spouse, or whatever. And I just really liked Yvonne's character. I liked that he was kind, he was nice. I liked that he was hardworking. And I love and the biggest of all, I loved that he loved me. I knew that he loved me, and he wanted to be with me like that. And I was saying, and then at a point, I was like, well, you absolutely have to, believe in God. And he was like, okay, so what's this guy thing? Let me see. Let me check it out. Let me find out what I need to do. So he was very,
You brought him to Jesus. He saved your life. You brought him to Jesus.
that was a requirement for me. So I was like, well, no, you don't. So he was like, no, I got it. I'm gonna figure it out. So I was like, okay, so we'll see what you're gonna do. And he looked into it. He understood that it was something that I absolutely believed in. So he took it seriously. And so then I was like, okay, so what's the problem? He has all these, things that I was requiring. So then I was like, okay, fine, let's go. And that was how we got married. We never dated. We never went out like that or anything. So
Wow. So you guys just went for the 100% transition of like, okay, we're friends, and then okay, let's go down the aisle.
I mean, there was no aisle. There was just we went to the courthouse. We signed the paper, and then we had a small little ceremony where my sister attended, and we had some witnesses, and it was like, I do, okay. That was
Well, I
it.
mean, honestly, that leads into the into what people say because there's this big thing that goes around that says the more money you spend on your wedding, the less likely your wedding
It's
is going
gonna
to
last.
last. You
Yeah,
know, but
absolutely.
I guess when you're marrying someone and you're just like, yo, I don't care about how much the money. It's not about the spectacle. It's about the person. You know, that's
Well,
100% your focus.
absolutely. That was for me at the time. I was a very serious person, but I had already been through so many things in my life, and life was very serious for me. You know, I had already lost my father. I lost my hearing. You know, it was just so many things one after the other, and I just felt like I didn't have a lot of time to make the right decisions. So it was like, no, get rid of all that other stuff. And furthermore, in my family, I didn't really see weddings. I didn't really see marriages like that. So who do I think I am to think I'm going to have a wedding? But you know, ironically, he's a prince in Africa, and he's this whole thing. So 5 to 7 years later, we went to Cameroon, and that's when they had this, like, it was a wedding of a woman's dream. I was the princess, and you know, it was this elaborate thing, and I was just like, I was so overwhelmed with it. But we did eventually get that wedding. We just didn't start with it.
Okay. So that brings up a really good next segment is that, you know, you did marry an African man. Like you said, he's from Cameroon. And, you
Yes.
know, you being African American, there's many times these disconnects between the two cultures. Okay. And I think a lot of black people in America, they think it's very easy to date and marry, you know, people from, you know, Africa, from the Caribbean, from South America. But there's
Hmm.
actually this huge disconnect. And I know some of the stuff I've been through, I know some of the conversations me and you've had, that a lot of times the Africans don't like us like that. And they're basically encouraging their people to be like, okay, don't you marry those African Americans, you know, leave them the heck alone. So, how did you and your husband navigate, okay, bringing these two cultures together that it can last 25, 26 years?
It's a good question, and it's a very valid point because I've seen a lot of clips actually, like African women, their moms, they're like, don't marry an African American. They're lazy. They're this. They're that. So I've seen it, and we've had our own challenges as well. I wasn't exactly the pick of the litter for his parents. I would say his mom mostly, because she absolutely wanted an African daughter, and I can understand that because you know, cultural things, cooking, like how they do things. I wasn't privy to the way that she did things, and so she just wanted an African daughter, and so she was not very, I would say, welcoming to me. I would say they both weren't welcoming to me, and it took some time, but I think that's where my femininity came in at, you know, just kind of soften people. It works on women and men. It works on everything, and just being really soft, being kind, being nice, being all those things. It really kind of, you know, made them accept me. But I think the challenges that we faced was really cultural, and
Mm-hmm.
it in the sense where what is respect?
Mm-hmm.
How do I do things around the house and his preferences. It's more so an expectation that we kind of grow up with. You grew up watching your mom doing this. I grew up watching my mom doing that. And so you just kind of imagine how it's going to be when you get married. So you have all these expectations in your mind once you do get married. And then when that person doesn't quite do it the way that you imagined it, there is there's a missed expectation there. And
Mhm.
so we were we were victims of that. We were victims of that as well. Um, he felt like I was not respectful, and I felt like I was respectful. So then we had to get on the same page as far as what is respect. What is respect in his eyes, and then what am I doing that I thought I was being respectful? And then sometimes it was more of a preference, not necessarily that I was disrespecting him, but it was more of I'm not doing things the way he prefers.
Mhm.
And their minds was, okay, well, that's nice, that's kind and everything, but that's not what his definition of respect is. So we had to kind of meet those two in the middle, and it took a little bit of time, but I think that was the biggest issue, just the concept or the idea of respect.
Mhm.
And they had so many of these little nuances, how you ask a question, how you when you enter the door, what do you greet someone, do you like, it's a lot of these little nuances that I didn't do or didn't know or didn't understand that I had to learn. So how we were able to bridge that gap is me. I went there many times. I went there every year. I just kind of learned the culture. I was willing to make changes, willing to adapt myself, my way of going about things to match more so of what he was looking for. So you have to have a willingness to change. And a lot of women, they're like, oh, you knew how it was when I got married. You knew this is how it was. And you can't change me. But that's absolutely the wrong mindset. You're absolutely supposed to be changing for your spouse. You're supposed to be adapting yourself. You're supposed to be adjusting so that you can be more of what he's looking for, and vice versa, where you ask him to change this, do that, or whatever, and he has to be willing to meet you so that you can satisfy him and he satisfies you. So that's how we were able to kind of get through 25 years. Just a willingness, and then it's a mindset. Um, you cannot be like, resist, or you have your hard lines. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And if this happens, then, you can't have those hard lines. You absolutely have to be willing to do whatever it takes. And if it's not, unless it's life or death, or it's going to lead you to, the gates of hell, you have to be willing to do it. So,
Well, I'm glad you actually brought that up because that's definitely one of the things that I know a lot of people. Because I think, like you said, I like the fact that you said it from even from his perspective that he had to make changes. Because I'm
mhm,
always telling people, on this channel, I talk to both men and women. So
mhm,
I'm very concerned about how women do life, but I'm also very concerned about how men do life. And while I do believe that the man, traditionally is the leader, I do believe that when you lead, you're supposed to lead like Jesus, which means you're supposed to be self-sacrificing.
absolutely.
And one of the things that, you said when you were talking about, people don't want to change. And now I'm gonna, just ask you a question now as a fellow influencer because, for everybody watching, April has her own channel. I'll put it up on the screen, so that you
Mhm.
guys can see it. But and go check her out. But the thing about it is, a lot of people they don't want to change. They think that it's always somebody else's fault. So, how do you feel, now coming into the dating space, understanding, maybe even getting feedback from some of your followers?
Mhm.
What could be some of the problems that people are facing when it comes to just making changes in their life to accommodate their person?
I think the biggest problem is mindset. It's mindset. It's you think that that person is there to please you. They're there to serve you. They're there for you. And so therefore you shouldn't be the one to change, they should. And vice versa. If I'm as a woman, I think the man is there to serve me, to buy me things, to this and that or whatever. Why am I changing? I'm not going to change for that. And for you, this is how I was. I've seen it. You met me. I was dressing like this. You met me. This when you came to talk to me. This is how I was dressing. This is how I was looking. Okay. And then vice versa, the man, he's like, you should be. I don't know what men think, so I never try to go speak from that perspective. But if your perspective is, I want to contribute to this man, I want to make his life better. I want to help him in his vision. I want to help him build something. I want to help whatever the vision is. Um, the only way you're going to get there is by changing. That's the absolute only way. And with the right mindset, you'll understand that. But I tell my ladies, my wives, whatever, all the time that I don't want to be the same me I was at 17. Some people say, "Oh, I don't even recognize myself when I was 17. I did this and that. I don't even recognize myself." You should not recognize yourself. You absolutely should not be the same person you was in your 20s when you're 30 or 40 or 50. I don't want to be that person. You should have gone through enough in life where you've improved your financial planning or whatever. You've improved your how you clean your home. You've improved how you take care of yourself. I mean, we make changes for everything. Absolutely. We change our hair, how we take care of it because we want it to be long and beautiful. We change how we do our nails because we want it to look a certain way. We're making changes all the time when we think it's for us or about us. But when it's for or about someone else, we're not willing to. That's absolutely, it's a mindset that has to be shifted. So, I mean, if this is a Christian space, it's being renewed by the transforming of our thinking. All those different scriptures that comes to mind,
Hmm.
we have to absolutely make the scriptures applicable in our life and in our thinking, and it will change our outcomes.
One of the things that you talked about making changes and constantly
Hmm.
going through changes, and
Hmm.
you all, I've like I said, I've known you since Skigi. We were back in
Yes.
Tuskegee together, and
Sticky.
and so one of the things that I was actually privy to is I was actually able to see the all of the changes. From when you guys were married at Skigi to when you moved to
Hmm.
Atlanta to the apartment that you guys were living in to the next house to the next house to the
Yes.
cars, all the other kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And what's really interesting, in you all's path is I've seen this huge growth,
Okay.
that, has happened over time. And it makes me excited. And I'm always, there you go, very happy for you all. But just kind of like you said, you kind of took it upon yourself to say, okay, I'm going to support this man, and Yvonne is
Absolutely.
not, yeah, and he's not the type of person, he just wants to do like these normal 9 to 5 type mindset. No, he has his own business.
Actually, Joseph, that's me. That was my influence.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Because you know, Cameroon, African, they're like, go get a job, go work
Mhm,
and this and that. That was their culture. Go
mhm.
find a job. I was like, no, you're not about to work. You're not about to work for these other people. So that was me.
Well, no, but that's good. That's good because that even makes it better to the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay.
Because in that, you're encouraging him, you're pushing him, and both of you are now on this path of bigger and better.
Right.
And like what I've seen with, like I say, with you guys, like I say, is nothing but growth. Nothing but growth. It's almost like God is just literally pouring out blessings in your life. And so, how hard was it to go through that? How hard was it to, like you say, work with him, encourage him, be that supporting, voice for him? See, there's 3 tenets that I'm always telling women on my channel that they have to follow. One is beauty, one is kindness, and the final one is support. You have to support your man. His
Yes.
growth is based off your support, and you've kind of proven that. But I don't think
Yes.
a lot of women recognize maybe how difficult that can be, over time. So, can you speak to how difficult it can be to support this man through his ups, his downs? I'm pretty sure there was days that he came in yelling and screaming, or ran into, to one room, or maybe took a drive and he was just angry at the world, you know. So, how did you navigate that?
Okay, that's a good question, and you are absolutely correct. It is a very difficult path in a journey. It is very much less traveled, and it is not what is seen when you say support someone. It is not as simple as it's not a simple thing to ask someone to do. First of all, you have to be willing to there is everything is a mindset, Joseph. Everything is a mindset. If I did not have the right mindset at any given point, you just will call it quits, because it's really, really hard. But um one, I had to be in the mindset that whatever he brought in, it was sufficient. Okay, so that's number one. Because when you're starting a business, you're starting that journey, websites, everything in our time, it was all new. Everything that we were trying to do was all new. There was nothing established. We couldn't follow a path or a plan or anything like that. So whatever he brought in, it had to be enough. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to be content with it. I had to, and then not that, oh, okay, oh, that's nice, good job. Not like that. No, like, oh, babe, that's amazing. Like, really, really in awe of his efforts, in awe of what he was able to accomplish, really, really uplifting him and letting him know that it's not what he wanted, but it is enough for us in this moment at this time. Especially in the beginning when we didn't have any children, we didn't have a lot of responsibility, we did not have a lot of debt or anything like that. So I'm like, no, babe, don't worry about it. I'm telling him that while it's not what he was looking for or he wanted, this is amazing. You did amazing. You went out there and you did something that no one is doing right now. Keep your head up, lift your chin. Absolutely, you have nothing to be like down about. This is amazing, and it's enough for me. It wasn't enough to, always get my hair done, my nails done, or whatever, but I was a woman with skill. Okay, I could do my own hair, and I could, file my nails, keep them looking clean and nice. I still made our home look like a home. I would keep it clean. Like whatever he brought in, it was in my mind, it was amazing. It was wonderful, and I wanted him to know it and feel that. And even though it wasn't always plush and lavish, it was sometimes very bare minimum. But to me, that was amazing because when you understand that for men, the earth was cursed. Work is really, really hard for men to accomplish and do just simply because of the curse. So for men, anything that they do out there, they have to do by the sweat of their brow. They have to really do and work and labor at. So for him to bring back something essentially to go out there and find, you know, sustenance and bring it home, I have to appreciate that. So I really, really appreciated that. I appreciated him at all times. At
Mm-hmm.
no times did I make him feel like it was not, you're not even, we can't even, we can't do this and we can't do that and we can't, and this is not the kind of apartment I want. And at no point, whatever he brought in, I made it the most beautiful. If it was a small little box, I cleaned it and I kept it and I made it presentable. I made it at home every single time. And that means that I had to have my mind right. I had to have my expectations in order and not want outside of what he could provide. So I couldn't want this 15-carat ring and he's barely making he's barely making anything. Absolutely not. I'm not going to let you go in debt for a ring that I'm just going to no. So one, I had to have the right mindset. Then two, I had to manage the money that he brought in. Now, sometimes men, they take care of everything, but I was the one that managed our money. And I made sure it covered everything it covered all of our needs and things like that. And I didn't spend on things that we didn't need. I was very conscious of everything that he brought in. So every time he brought something in, I made it I make him understand that this is amazing to me. I'm going to take very good care of it. I'm going to, make sure that we're covered. And it's just a mindset that I had. And I implemented it in our lives. And as we went from level to level, then we do a little bit more. We get a little bit bigger. You just keep going. You grow with him instead of demanding in the beginning, and then he goes out there and gets himself into a situation or a job or whatever, credit and debt, trying to satisfy me.
So do you
I know,
think
does that answer your question?
yes, ma'am, it does. But
Okay.
with that, do you think a lot of, women that are dating are
Hmm.
putting too much pressure on some of the men? Now, when I say that, I do
Hmm.
want the women out there to know that, again, we're not talking about always men that are, not doing what they need to do. Like I'm always,
Hmm.
just like I talk about the non-negotiables, for women, I
Right.
talk about the non-negotiables for men. And
Right.
so men
Hmm.
need to be moving towards being that protector, provider, leader. So a man that ain't got no job, he's sitting on his butt, and I always tell the men that follow me, there's no excuse if you don't have a job. You can sell sandwiches door to door. There's
Yes.
so many things you can do door to door where you could start it literally with $10. So there's no excuse to me for a man to sit on his butt for 6 months. However,
Absolutely.
I do know that there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of pressure. A lot of men feel a lot of pressure, to
Hmm.
be able to provide at a certain level. So do you think that when
Hmm.
we're dealing with apples to apples, maybe women that are educated or women that maybe just completed high school and went to technical school, or people that just finished high school, but then their partner did the same. We're talking. That's why I say apples to apples. Is
Right.
there people that are trying to put way too much pressure again on the men in their lives way too early instead of looking at the literal works of their hands as being their potential to move forward?
I absolutely think that women are putting so much pressure on men simply because they're just demanding more material things. I don't know, somehow we've become a little bit more materialistic where I want this and I want that and my car should look like this and all these things. It's not absolutely necessary. It's not absolutely necessary, but I mean, you can want those things, but maybe just be a little bit more balanced and not demand it. Like right now, the hair scene in Atlanta is crazy. You can't get your hair done for less than like $300. Like, it was not like that when we were growing up. I mean, when we were kind of maturing as young adults and things like that. But I didn't put that demand on my husband for to pay for that kind of hairstyle or whatever. I would just do it myself. Just simply to just take the pressure off of him and let him just focus on providing the bills and growing his business or growing his whatever. But comparing apples to apples, I mean, I think prioritizing what's important
Hmm.
and not focusing on the small stuff. I think I don't know how to answer that. Like,
Yeah, because I
comparing
mean, I
apples to
think
apple.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think one of the problems that happens, especially for women, and people talk about it a lot in the dating space, is that most women are
Hmm.
hypergamous, i.e., they prefer to date a man that makes more money than them, throughout their life. And I do think that that's true to a degree. But one of the differences between the way men date and the way women date is that men, we really don't consider a woman's job slash education when we date her. The only
And why
thing,
would you?
yeah,
Why
and
would
that
you?
and that's the point. But women do. So for us, like for me, I mean, we just talked about it. We're both educated from Tuskegee, so we're university
Right.
educated. And while I
Right.
don't have a master's degree, I
Hmm.
do have my bachelor's. And
Hmm.
because of my profession, I do decent in my job.
Hmm.
So if I run into a woman that only went to high school, there is a huge difference in how much money we make,
Right.
whether she's my age or younger. But
Right.
if she's dating or is used to dating men that only completed high school, more
Hmm.
than likely they make comparable to her. So what happens many times is I'll run into a woman, or somebody like me will run into a woman that is, like I
Mhm.
say, only graduated high school. We will date
Mhm.
her. Now she's used to a man that makes all this extra money.
Mhm.
And now, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. And so now she's back in the dating pool. But
Mhm.
instead of going back down, say to men that make $50,000, she's now like, no, 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 I want these guys to make this money up here because she's tasted it. And now she's like, okay, I
Right.
deserve XYZ. And so what it does is it puts more pressure on the men at her level because she's thinking, I'm at this new level, but no, you're not because the man didn't marry you.
Right.
You're really at the same level that you left. And so
Okay.
that becomes that's a big issue right now. It's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Like the men on my channel, I'm sure that they will be all in the comments just about this concept because it's like, and even men that come out to Christian Singles Connect, they complain about it all the time. They're like, why do women want all this money? And it'll be apples to apples. They're talking to a high school educated woman, just like they might be a high school educated man, or they might have went to technical school, or forget it, they might have went to university. But because the woman has a high powered job or whatever it is, or maybe forget high power, she might have dated a millionaire, and I've dated women who dated millionaires. So now they're thinking, oh well, if a man doesn't buy me $300 shoes and doesn't do this and doesn't do that, I don't want him. And it's like I'm constantly trying to tell them, it's like when you start to deal with men that make $150,000 or more a year, you're talking
Mhm.
about less than 10% of the American population. That's white,
Mhm.
black, and everything. Because a lot of black women think, oh, I can just date white men. No, 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 no. It doesn't matter. Every man is the top. That's the top 10% of America.
Right.
Okay, so a lot of men struggle with this financial piece. Now, I always compare it to the beauty side that women struggle with. Because women struggle if they're not, let's be real, if they're, significantly overweight, if they're not keeping up with their hair, their nails, all this other kind of stuff, they struggle. So it's kind of tit for tat. But since I have you on here and we're talking a little bit about the finances, that's why I was curious, to what you've run into with the ladies and even, just out here. How can, people kind of bridge that divide between these women that are saying, hey, I want all of this stuff, but it's kind of like they're really dating outside of their quote unquote class, and that's kind of what how they're getting it. And I'm not against women doing that, don't get me wrong, I'm not against women doing it. I'm just trying to find out solutions for the men that are going through it.
Okay, solutions for that. It's a complex problem, but I do understand. So financially, it's some. Unfortunately, some of these women, much like men, are being ruined. So you're pretty much saying that a woman has been ruined by, someone that's kind of pulled her up to his level, and then he left her, and now she has to go back down. It's typical. You move out of the hood when you get a little bit more money, and you're good, you're happy, you live in the suburbs now, whatever. Then something goes wrong, then where are you going? You're going back to the hood. You're going back to Section 8. So I do understand why some women, they don't want to go back to that because it is truly stressful. Not having anything outside of your bills, not being able to enjoy just going to get a Starbucks without, looking at your bank account or whatever. Um, but unfortunately, it's a mindset shift. And there is so much about women right now that needs to change their thinking. And I advocate for that on my channel. I'm constantly talking to women about, why are you thinking this way?
Hmm.
Why do you want this thing? How is it impacting your life? Them having a $300 pair of shoes doesn't upgrade them. It really doesn't. It doesn't make their life better. It actually makes their life worse because you got to take care of all this fine, whatever you bought. But if you don't have a house to put it in because you didn't pay rent, if you don't have your, if you don't have your necessities taken care of, but yet you have all these fine items lying around, like how does that benefit you? It really doesn't. So it's a mindset shift. And furthermore, if you were to get married and when your husband is going through something, maybe he lost his job or something, and now you have to scale back, you have to be able to do that. So what's happening right now is if a guy brings her up to this level and then, that they didn't work out and she has to go back down, she doesn't know how to abound into a base. So maybe it's just a lesson that she has to learn. But you're definitely going to need to have that in your kind of that tool in your back pocket for in your marriage. There's times when we have a little bit more and we can do vacations and trips and travel and all these things. And then there's a time when, okay, the client didn't pay us or, COVID hits and whatever else happens. And then we have a little bit less. So now we have to scale back. It is something that you need to have in your marriage. Having more and then having less. You had a little bit more in this relationship with this guy. Great. I hope you enjoy that. Now you have a little bit less. Change your thinking. Learn how to, ebb and flow. But that's what our finances do. There's a little bit more. There's a little bit less. So for me, it's not a big thing. It's not a big issue. And I just simply call it what it is. I guess you got to learn to go with the flow. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So yeah, I'm gonna ask like one more major question, and I
Okay.
think that might be when we're about done. But I did want to say this: like you and your husband are like to me right now in my life, y'all are kind of like my model marriage. I just love everything you guys have done and all the ways that you all move. And learning so much from you, from Yvonne, over the years. And I've even had told him, like, because I know that he really takes the Sabbath seriously. And while we don't, agree on which day to be the Sabbath, I started to force myself to do it as well. And I
Mhm.
started to notice, a huge uptick, in not only my relationship with God, but also in, just the ability to do more work, as crazy as it sounds.
Yeah.
But I did want to talk about one thing that I think is really interesting because of you all's situation. But I'm hoping, like I say, that you can kind of flow with me on this,
Okay.
and that the watchers, the viewers can kind of get it. So I would describe myself as a
Okay.
soft alpha. That's generally what I say, like alpha male.
Uh,
I would describe myself as that because on this channel I talk about three types: the instinct type, the thinking type, and the heart type. And I've often said in the past that I am an instinct heart type. Okay, and the instinct is very driven to do life, and the heart type is very kind, compassionate, loving, romantic. That is the type. And one of the interesting things about Yvonne, and like I say, people don't have to recognize in college we knew each other, but we weren't really close friends. We actually became close friends, later
over
on.
time. Yeah.
And at that time, I started to recognize that Yvonne was kind of like me. He feels more like a soft alpha. Okay. But then when, a lot of the stuff that he talked about with you, and when we were going back and forth with the personality test,
Hmm.
you're in that alpha range as well. Okay. And so because of that, a lot of people might say that you're the strong black woman and all this other kind of stuff. So being that a woman that walks in strength, a woman that knows that she can handle life by herself if need be, can you talk about the pros and cons of actually submitting yourself to, your husband?
Okay. Pros and cons. Oh my God. So you came with the questions. Like these are real questions. Okay. So let me see. um, Actually, I'll tell you, and I'll just, this is for the women. Okay. We can lead from behind. Okay. So I'm I can lead through suggestions and, kind of nudges and with my femininity. But being submissive, I think the biggest con, I guess, of being submissive is people's opinion. Mostly, it's not really even in my marriage. It's people's opinion. They think that, well, why can't she do this and why can't she do that? And if it was me, I would do this. And I've had a lot of negative, and it's mostly from women perspectives or views on why I submit to my husband and what they would do and why they don't like it and just all those things. I think those are the biggest cons, but I'm not really a person that tries to please everyone, or I'm not really a person that really even cares what anyone thinks. So it doesn't really bother me as much, but I do recognize that other women could be impacted by that. Um, but I'm just not one of them. So, but in terms of the pros, the more you do it, the better at it you get, and then the more benefits you see. So the more I had to learn to let go. I had to learn to, and it's really something that you have to be very intentional about, and you have to really practice through doing. So you do, which is your practice, and that cycle is like you get into that cycle of you do your practice, and then it's easier and easier. But learning to let go of everything when I'm not trying to control it or I'm not trying to get a certain outcome, it gives me a lot more peace. It gives me a lot more woosah, like just a lot more. Like I'm not so on edge about everything, trying to fix everything, trying to do everything, making sure everything is getting done, and so on and so forth. It just kind of takes that stress off of me because that's not really how we were designed. We're not really designed to carry a lot of weight and stress and all those things. And by me learning to let go allows me to kind of live in that place of peace, serenity, not being worried about certain things, let him take the responsibility and all those things. So submission, it does more for me in terms of just my, I don't know what's the word, my, peacefulness, and it strengthens my husband. So if I'm constantly trying to match him, or I'm trying to make him do something I want to do, or challenging him in a certain way, it kind of takes away his security in that relationship. But if I just give him that room, that space, or whatever, it solidifies his place, his position. It causes him to be a lot more confident. It causes him to have more self-esteem. I mean, just it really benefits him. It builds him in a way where I want to see him like that. I want to see him. I guess it kind of builds his alpha a little bit and it solidifies it. So it just kind of puts us in our both of our places and secures us. And so that's the biggest pro I think you get from submission. And I guess the biggest con, I don't really see a downfall to being submissive to my husband. It hurts sometimes. And also sometimes he does things that I don't think is the right move. But I'm not waiting for it to say, see, I told you you should listen to me, whatever. No, I'm very, I console him. I'm sure he already feels bad enough that things didn't turn out the way that he imagined or whatever. And then, I'm like, well, and I jump on his bandwagon. I'm like, no, we'll just the next time or the next situation or the next whatever, we'll do better. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, you should have, but in and of itself, he's going to think I should have listened to my wife. I should have taken her counsel, her advice.
Mhm.
And he does that a lot more the more that I actually submit. But the more that I try to force my way, I'm gonna challenge him. So we're headbutting, and he's gonna show me that I'm not stronger than him. And furthermore, one of the things I tell all of my wives, I don't want to be stronger than my husband. I don't wanna win an argument or whatever. I want him to win, so I'm going to back down. I'm not going to. I could absolutely win if I wanted to, but then what is it going to benefit me? What is it? What am I going to accomplish by winning? It's only going to hurt him, hurt me, hurt what my children see. So overall, I just don't want to win against my husband. So
Well, I think you
I hope that
guys.
answers it.
No, it did, and it's like I said. I mean, I wish people literally could see your family, and because I talk a lot about you guys, on the channel, because I literally see you all almost as a model type of situation because they have like the best kids in the world. They, like I say, I've watched their growth. Now they live in a huge home, here in Atlanta. You know, Yvonne is now, doing acting. He was actually the very first person I interviewed on the channel. He actually does acting. He's actually been in Netflix movies and all this other kind of stuff. Had, his own TV series for a while. And when you see that type of growth and you see God's hand, on people, to that level. And that comes with a lot of obedience. And I'm constantly telling people the more they line up with the Bible, the more their life is actually going to be good. But people make excuses for parts of the Bible where they just don't want to follow this part or they don't want to follow this part and all this other kind of stuff, and it just hurts them. And like I even look at my sister because my sister, she's definitely a little bit more of the type of person that wants somebody leading her, but she still has her own ambition. And very much kind of like you, she has now reached like very high pinnacle almost in her career. She finally, well, not finally, but she recently got a her PhD, so now she's a doctor. She's actually been literally was one of the top 5 people in her field for all of America, and actually had to fly, to I think it was D.C. so that they could kind of crown her, one of the top 5 people. And but in that same breath, I literally was over the house where she would talk to her husband, and her husband would say, "No, you can't do that. No, we can't do that right now." And then I would watch, the anguish on her face where she was like, "I can't do this one thing I want to do right now. I can't spend but $200 on food, or I can't go get this dress that I want." And she was submitting herself to her husband. Now she has everything that she wanted in life, but it was through that. And I think, unfortunately, especially in the African American community, we pit ourselves against each other, and we hurt ourselves not recognizing that our benefit and our blessing is like literally, yeah, just to do it, to come together and do it. And so, that is just definitely something. So I'm very excited because, like I said, we were able to have April on, we were able to have her husband on, Yvonne, and we're able to maybe one day we get both of them on and they can talk more about their marriage because I think it's just so important, for people out there to see good marriages. I recently did something off Dear Future Wifey, and the guy, there was a pastor on there, and he had been cheating on his wife for like 20 years, and he thought it was okay. I mean, he literally was like, "Yeah, well, what's wrong with that?" But yeah, I finally figured it out. But I was like, I mean, you put your wife through anguish, for 20 plus years. So I think it's so important for us to see positive, people, but understand their struggle, that it's not going to be easy. There are going to be a lot of things, bloodshed, sweat and tears that nobody sees but you all and God.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end this here. I thank everybody, for watching this particular video. Again, go check out April. I'll put, her information up on the screen. And until then, please like, please subscribe, and I'm going to see you all in the very next video.